everybody, Maria Bartholdi joined by Simon Gertzen here to watch Tom Ross's draft. Let's take a look at where he was sitting around the table in relation to Mike Sigrist, who we just saw draft. Now, Mike Sigrist was on Azorius, Simon, is that right?
Yeah, he has a Mortify, so he might be splashing black, but it's basically an Azorius build.
So we're going to go a few seats around. So for packs 1 and packs 3, he was essentially passing to Tom Ross, So if you're going into this draft, Simon, just generally, what are you hoping happens here at Mythic Championship?
So the best thing that can happen to you is that you start with a powerful card in a guild or a single color card, and then that guild keeps flowing. Because what happens otherwise is you have to really kind of juggle around, and maybe you will have to miss your first few picks because suddenly Rakdos is open and you started with Azorius, which is what happens, and you have to manage these situations, but of course you don't want it to happen.
And 2 colors versus 3 colors has kind of been something I've been wondering about in draft. Of course, the ability to draft 3 a lot easier in this set than a lot of sets, but is it something that you want to do?
So I actually take a really simple angle towards that, which is if my deck is slow and controlling, I'm very happy to include a 3rd color. If I'm Rakdos aggro or Gruul aggro with a bunch of combat tricks, I'm not thinking about splashing for a 3rd color.
So as power level goes, as for the guilds, Azorius is at the top of the list for a lot of pros, as far as I can tell from what I've heard out on the floor. For you, where do you rank the guild power levels?
I think the blue guilds are just quite powerful because blue has a lot of individually powerful cards. Chillbringer for me, by the way, is the best common in the set. And that said, you can play Gruul, you can play Simic, you can play Rakdos. All of these guilds, in my opinion, are equally viable. And this is pod play, right? Pod draft.
Right.
So if there are 5 guilds and maybe a gate stack, that's 6. So I want to be in a guild that I get for myself. And I don't want to be in a guild where 2 or 3 players are fighting.
All right, well, let's see if we can take a look at Tom Ross's draft, every pick of every pack and what he chose. All right, let's take a look. Here we go. Tom the Boss Ross here, kicking his draft off with a pretty nice card there, Ethereal Absolution.
That's an absolute bomb, Maria. That is probably the best rare you can open. It is, of course, it's not colorless, it's not single colored. You want to be Orzhov, but what I just said, if you are a controlling deck with a bomb, you can play this in a 3-color deck, you can play this in a 4-color deck, and it will be amazing every time it hits the battlefield.
And you know, even if you're behind and you slam this card down, sometimes you completely just turn the game around, which is the definition of a bomb, of course. Good in all phases of the game. There's an ill-gotten inheritance in this pack as well, but of course, Ethereal Absolution going to be the pick here for Tom Ross. Just an absolute great start to his draft.
If you're wondering why he's looking at this pack for so long, he wants to remember what he's passing. He wants to deduce from when this pack comes back what the people at the table are picking.
Let's take a look at Tom Ross's 2nd pick here. Syndicate Messenger pulled to the front, as well as Lawmage's Binding. So are you a fan of this little bird?
No, not as a 2nd pick. I'm fine to pick this card, but I don't think you wanna start your draft off with a mediocre common.
There's Bedevil near the back of the pack too. Are you considering that pick on power level?
I could be convinced to take Bedevil. I could also be convinced to take a Lawmage's Binding, for example.
Sure.
I think this is not the stage where you lock into anything, and I would go with power level for sure. Even the Guildgate, I think, is worthy of consideration.
Syndicate Messenger is in fact going to be the pickup here for Tom Ross. Speaking of guild gates, how early do you take them, Simon?
Well, I don't take them 2nd pick in all situations, but if you have a few payoff cards, you really want to prioritize them. At this event, at the Mythic Championship, you don't know how highly your players at the table value them. So surprised by this 2nd pick, I have to say.
Rampaging Rendhorn pulled to the front here, along with an Ill-Gotten Inheritance for Tom Ross. An Ill-Gotten Inheritance is one of these cards that you see a lot on Magic Arena. I've played against somebody who had 3 copies in their deck. I know some people have played 5. What do you think?
It gives you inevitability. Now, we could say Tom already has that with his 1st pick, but it is a super powerful card that I actually like in Orzhov and Rakdos.
Do you like it better in a controlling deck or in a more mid-range deck?
It's actually good in both, because you are rewarded for dragging out the game. The longer it stays in play, the more rewarded you get. But in an aggro deck, its effect is that much better. So actually, I like it in all kind of decks.
Let's take a look at what Tom opens up here. Concordia Pegasus kind of pulled to the front here. Rhythm of the Wild in there from Gruul. But, a Final Payment.
Yeah, that looks to be the most solid card. Of course, Rhythm of the Wild doesn't fit into any of the cards he has picked so far, and it almost feels like he's forcing himself to be Orzhov a little
Yes,
bit with
I
that
agree.
second pick. He didn't even consider the Bedevil as far as I saw it. So here, picking and cutting the black-white cards seems to be a very solid plan. This is the first draft at this event, so you don't have to go crazy, right? You have an Ethereal Absolution already.
Right.
Let's just make that work.
But what happens if you open a Skewer the Critic, Simon?
This is, I believe, Mike Sigrist's first pack, so it has now gone halfway around the table, and it's still quite powerful. And of course, Cure the Critics and Cult Guildmage are more powerful than, for example, Consigned to the Pit, which would be in his primary colors.
So here, do you kind of go off color and make a speculatory pick, or think, hey, maybe I'm dipping my toe into red, or Consigned to the Pit like Tom?
So you can splash red in your Orzhov deck, but what you're getting is just some removal spells that are toughness based, whereas Orzhov already has unconditional removal. So I don't really see a high value in splashing red in your Orzhov decks.
Wow, that's a great point. Footlight Fiend pulled to the front here in this pack for Tom Ross. Just a little 1/1 that pings when it dies, but I don't know, maybe it's good enough.
Yeah, maybe that's just the pick. There's also a
Blood Crypt.
If you think that Footlight Fiend is just a little bit too low on the power scale and you want to be staying more open, I think Blood Crypt would be a reasonable pick, but I can totally understand not picking it here. There are a bunch of Guild Gates going around, and who knows if you really want to splash red.
Rakdos Trumpeter at the front of this pack, and ooh, there's a Get the Point.
Okay, suddenly that red splash looks a lot more interesting because this is a premium removal spell. Bring to Trial, good against Colossus, but dead in a lot of matchups.
Yeah.
So interesting pick if you want to go for the splash, the higher variance pick, or if you want to stay to your colors. And I mean, Tom is sticking to his guns here. He's not really taking any chances.
Bring to Trial, the pick here for Tom Ross, who is going hard on Orzhov, hopefully rewarded in pack 2 coming from the other direction.
Very conservative drafting. I wasn't quite expecting that. I think we know Tom from really looking at this game from all the possible angles, but here it seems that I think he was open going into the draft, but his first pick really told him, I can pick those 80% kind of cards, because in the end, my deck will still be, I don't know,
Good
a
enough.
7, 8 out of 10 easily because of my first pick.
Impassioned Orator here, the pick for Tom Ross, gains life when creatures enter the battlefield. And of course, every creature better because of Ethereal Absolution if it hits a table in any game. 10th District Veteran here pulled to the front, and another example of one of those kind of like medium rate cards you're talking about.
Yeah, solid, unexciting, playable cards. I was quite surprised that Ice Everywhere going around that late. Mike actually got it on the wheel.
6 cards left here in pack number 1 for Tom Ross, solidly positioning himself into Orzhov in this draft so far, not just Grudian here. Is this a card you like at all?
It's playable.
Yeah.
I like to have Death Touch creatures against Gruul in particular, but there are too many games being decided by flyers, and a 3-mana 2/2 is not exciting. But once again, not even considering something like Rakdos fixing there.
Another Rampaging Rendhorn left in the pack, notably. There's a little Scrabbling Claws.
There's also Glaive of the Guild Pact, and Orzhov has a lot of good gold creatures. Now, Tom doesn't have those right now, but I think it would have been a reasonable pick there.
Justicar's Portal pulled to the front here for Tom Ross as we round out pack number 1, staying on color the entire way through.
Yeah. And something that's important to realize here is Tom is banking, or at least hoping, to get rewarded in pack 2. Because the way he drafted, he made it as clear as possible that he is in Orzhov.
Oh, yes.
He never even strayed away. He gave those Rakdos cards to the left. He gave Azorius cards to the left. Orzhov cards is what he took. And of course, he can hope that to his left, at least 1 or 2 players are not in Orzhov as a result.
So let me ask you about that. You know, how valuable is it to kind of bank your strategy on something like that when it's only 1 pack?
So I think that it's often overrated to do that, but in this kind of scenario where we see that Tom sees his deck as one absolute bomb and almost a guaranteed late game victory condition, and then the rest just being solid cards that get him there, then I think it's super valuable, because you need that quantity of cards to make your deck work. Whereas in other situations, I'm more open to also go on a collision course and say, look, I'm here for power level.
Sure.
I need whatever I can get, and you are on my left, sorry about that, but you just have to deal with it.
Do you think this format rewards synergy more than power?
No, I think it's a power level driven format mostly. The cards are just inherently powerful. Look at a card like Ill-Gotten Inheritance.
Right.
It's just, what is the synergy? There's spectacle synergy, but if you don't have spectacle synergy, it's still going to be a great card.
Do you think a card like Consigned to the Pit makes the cut for Tom?
Absolutely. I think it's actually quite an undervalued effect. We talk about unconditional removal, and of course this costs 6 and is a sorcery, but still, you get to deal with anything your opponent plays.
All right, let's take a look here as Tom gets ready for pack number 2. And remember, we're going to be watching for those payoffs coming from this other direction here in pack 2, since he cut Orzhov so strongly in pack number 1. In fact, like you said, making some concessions on power just to stay on color.
And I see 2 ways this can go. We can see him now take Orzhov card after Orzhov card after Orzhov card, or the pack's tempting him once again to go maybe into Rakdos or Azorius as potential splashes.
Forbidding Spirit here, how do you like that as a first pick?
I think it's a very medium card.
Yeah.
It looks a lot better than it is because somehow its stats and its ability are not what the format wants. There would be other formats where this would be a slam dunk first pick, but here, for example, it is competing with Get the Point.
Yeah, Rakdos Firewheeler in there for any Rakdos fans, myself included.
Yeah, but Tom is not going to splash a black, black, red, red card.
All right, fine. Disciplined drafting.
And he's staying true to his overall strategy that we've mapped out here.
Forbidding Spirit, the pick here for Tom Ross in pack number 2. So staying on target. Let's take a look at what he's getting past here. Angelic Exaltation is in this pack, which is pretty interesting. A card that has high power level, but one of the best commons, Blade Juggler. Consecrate and Consume as well.
I love Consume. Consecrate you almost never cast in limited, but Consume is super powerful. Edict effects are generally bad, but if they snatch your opponent's best creature, that's a different story. You can already see that this might be a sign that Tom is getting rewarded for cutting Orzhov cards. We see Consume, we see Blade Juggler, we see the Exaltation. That is some power level, and it's a difficult pick. Blade Juggler considered to be one of the best commons in the set. Still surprised to see him pick it over removal spell.
Blade Juggler, the pickup here for Tom Ross. As you said, a card a lot of the pros really like, deceptively powerful. Pitiless Pontiff in this pack, as well as a Knight of Sorrows pulled to the front here, and the Pontiff, a good pickup.
Yeah, decent. Not exactly what his deck needs, but you need some creatures, of course, for early blocking duties anyway. So many Lawmage's Bindings.
I know.
There could have been a sweet Esper control deck, I feel like.
Maybe
things
even
that could have
been,
just like all the removal colors, no green, with the Ethereal Absolution as a kind of a splash card to top it off.
That's spicy, I like it. Pitiless Pontiff, though, is going to be the pick for Tom here. Get Indestructible and Death Touch for 1 if you sacrifice another creature. Card that was popular in some Mardu lists for Standard.
Can we mention how popular Guild Gates are at this table?
Yeah.
Like, you don't see them after pick 3 or something like that.
I want to know where the Gates drafter is. Ooh, there's one. Undercity Scavenger here pulled to the front for Tom.
Wow.
Summary Judgment, and there's another one.
Yeah, that's fortunate. You know,
Consume.
It's being opened to your left, 2 or 3 packs to your left, and the people are not taking it, which is a really good sign that these Orzhov cards are actually available.
All right, so the payoffs seeming to flow for Tom Ross here, and this time he is going to pick up a copy of Consume. Summary Judgment being passed here as well, though.
And something that when I was watching Mike Sigrist draft was he had all this card draw and removal, but very few ways to actually win the game. If you're relying on a Chillbringer and a Sphinx to actually take it down, if you play against a removal-heavy deck like Tom's, you might just not have that win condition available. And Tom doesn't worry about this because he has Ethereal Absolution.
He's got the game locked up. Basilica Bellhaunt, that's a nice one, talking about rewards.
Yeah, sweet rewards here. You can see that his mana base is going to be rock solid. His power level is shaping up fine. And all these decent picks he made are just going to be that middle ground. You know, you need to have card 15 to 23 in your 40 card deck anyway.
Wow, I love the Bellhaunt. Gains you life, takes a card from your opponent, and a pretty nice body at 3/4. Exposed to Daylight, there's another Noxious Grudy and another Knight of Sorrows as possibilities here for Tom. So he's got the Daylight pulled forward. Why would we be considering this pick, Simon?
Just as a safety valve, depending on what you're playing against. I think that Guildgate is Azorius, so not a consideration. Otherwise, I would also consider just taking Ors of Guildgate. Your deck is already shaping up quite nicely. Now you want to minimize the variance of your opening hands, of your mulligans, and so on.
All right, taking and expose the Daylight away from a competitor, but also
and
for his
sideboarding
own.
it,
Yeah.
of course.
Prowling Caracal here in this pack. Carrion Imp as well.
Yeah, Carrion Imp is a card that is really, really mediocre even.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be better too.
Yeah, but compared to the other creatures you can play in this format that leave behind 1/1s, that pump itself, this is just a 2/3 with a marginal ability.
He adds the Imp to the pile of drafted cards here.
The Imp is easily the card that you, if it makes your deck, you're not happy about it, but sometimes it just sneaks in at 23rd.
How about a Senate Griffin?
Yeah, playable. I'm not a huge fan of it. I actually like Sentinel's Mark, but in a deck that is a lot more creature and combat focused, not in a control deck like this.
Senate Griffin, of course, castable because of those hybrid mana symbols here in his deck for a couple of white.
It should be better than the Carrion Imp.
Yeah, I think
easily.
so. You get the Scry. Next pick here for Tom.
Yeah, by the way, talking about playables, if you have Ethereal Absolution and a really good late game, there's nothing wrong with playing 18 lands as well. So you really don't have to include those last picks. Although the Crocodile, really, really good in the late game decks.
Absolutely. And I mean, even if it comes in out of the sideboard, some decks are just like, oh, just kidding. I can literally not attack you anymore.
If Gruul doesn't have a combat trick, they might not be able to punch through anymore.
Portal here pulled to the front in the colors for Tom. Nothing else in the pack for him here. But he's making note of everything that's going on.
Yeah, you could even take out a card here just so that somebody else doesn't have access to it, but it doesn't make a big difference. Tom is not too concerned about taking a medium pick away from the opposition here.
Still a couple of cards in the colors here in this pack. Knight of Sorrows. Some card draw that comes at quite a price there.
He doesn't have enough creatures to use that ability. It is quite fun, though, if you're playing against Azorius and they pacify all your creatures and you just sacrifice them.
Arrestor's Zeal combat trick.
Yep, theoretically playable. Probably won't make it if you consider the need to play at least 12, 13 creatures and you want your absolutions, your card draw spells, your removal. A combat trick often doesn't make it.
Knight of the Last Breath left in here.
That's
and another
interesting.
expose.
He has an expose already, but Knight of the Last Breath is not a card you're happy to run.
No.
So just picking the second sideboard card here is probably correct.
Growth Spiral for a standard deck there. Just kidding. I don't know what he's playing. And the last pick here from pack number 2, Tower Defense. All right, what do you think, Simon, so far? 2 packs in.
Well, a lot of medium cards, but I think Tom is happy about that. I think Tom wanted it that way. It's not exactly my style of drafting. I like to spike the power level up a little bit more, but we can't say that he was not rewarded in pack 2. He got a bunch of powerful cards.
Absolutely.
He could have had 2 consumes even. He has the Bellhound, which is going to be amazing. I'm thinking of a mana base of 8 plains, 8 swarms, and a Guildgate. Maybe 18 lands, depending on how pack 3 shapes up. You can play Orzhov, any Orzhov card you get now, and you're just going to upgrade your deck little by little. Overall, he didn't give himself the chance to draft a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10.
No.
I think that was just out of the question with his second pick, but still, you can easily go 3-0 with these cards.
And sometimes with power, you sacrifice consistency, and his deck's going to be really consistent.
It's always this trade-off. You don't get both.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be too easy, right?
Yeah.
If everybody could draft the most powerful, most consistent deck, we wouldn't be watching this because these are exactly the decision points where players show that they're really athletes in a way because they're managing their resources and what they're playing with.
I'm really going to be interested to find out how this deck performs versus the other decks at the table and find out if he gets punished for going for consistency over power or if power just takes a nosedive. And that Ethereal Absolution, by the way, that was his pack 1, pick 1, an absolute bomb.
And when we say consistency over power, we mean every card except for the Absolution,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So,
That one.
and that's the main reason why he's going for that strategy. He wouldn't go for that strategy without that first pick. He wouldn't just pick mediocre Orzhov cards over and over again, because then he would have a 5 out of 10.
Yeah,
and
great point.
He would be going for a 50% match win rate, if at all, right?
Yeah. All right, here we go. Pack number 3 for Tom Ross. Building a pretty nice Orzhov deck.
I think he's, I don't know if happy, but I think he's content.
Okay.
With his position, and if you would talk to him, he would basically tell you, look, I had this first pick, and that guided my decisions, and I'm happy with where I ended up.
Ooh, Gruesome Demise here. An option, great removal spell.
Yeah, should be better than Sky Tethers. He does want to maybe get in damage on the ground. He's not in his Azorius deck, and exiling a creature can be very valuable as well.
Spire Mangler and Sky Tether, also options for Tom, and he's going to be keeping his eye on those as it goes around the table. But of course, you just want a good solid removal spell, and Demise hits a ton of stuff that you care about.
And once again, the decision I think is already made.
Yeah.
He was just memorizing the rest of the pack. The first pack, as we saw in pack 1, gives you the most information about what's going on at the table, although in pack 3, it's more about what can I expect to come back. Is this Viscopa Vampire maybe wheeling?
Right.
Because there are 7 better cards in the pack.
I love it. The person to his right already laid the cards down pretty early. Very decisive drafter over there. Another, there's a Plague Rite pulled to the front here. How do you like this card?
I like it a lot in decks that want to be attacking, but if you're not aggressive, you don't really use its ability very much. The alternatives are not great though.
No.
Even in a controlling deck, I don't want to overload on 2-drops. He was even looking at a red card there. I think the
Daggercaster, yeah.
we're not really interested in splashing at this late stage of the game, especially not with Basilica Bellhaunt making our mana base so Orzhov centric.
Plague White, the pickup there for Tom Ross, which is, a hard card to block.
And there's something with all the simplification and idealization that we do as casters. The thing is, sometimes your Orzhov control late game deck just attacks with a 2-drop and a 3-drop, right? You can just go Plague White into Forbidding Spirit and hit for 5 on turn 4, and that's very, very good as well.
Dead Revels here, an option, as well as Undercity Scavenger for Tom Ross. How do you like the Revels?
Almost no alternatives in this pack,
Yeah.
but in this deck, I don't love it. His creatures are all really mediocre, and he doesn't force trades in the early game because he's not an aggressive deck.
He's going to pick it up anyway here.
No Grasping Thwelts anywhere, so he didn't get the cornerstone Orzhov creature that he wants. Also no Oligarchs, so it's not your typical Orzhov deck that we're seeing here.
Ooh, not a lot in this pack for him. There's a Locket.
I like the Locket. I like Lockets in this format a lot more than in Guilds of Ravnica.
Why is that?
3-color decks, 5-color decks. Games go longer, decks are less aggressive. Often with these decks you have a Death Touch creature, so you can play the Locket on 3 and still activate it or play it. You want to ramp into your more expensive cards. Just a solid pickup, but let's be honest, this pack 3 is not nice to Tom.
No, pack 2 was looking pretty good for him. This one, he seems to be getting cut somewhere.
So, well, if we're
Maybe.
truthful here, we don't really know if Orzhov is open at all from the right.
True.
He first picked Ethereal Absolution, and he didn't even
didn't
think
look
about
back.
anything else. He picked a Syndicate Messenger as a second pick, and that's not a signal that Orzhov is open.
No.
It's not a signal for anything.
Cry of the Carnarium here could be a potentially nice card for him too.
Yeah,
Blade
Cry of the
Brand.
Canarium is a weird card because it exiles all of these cheap Rakdos and Orzhov creatures which have Afterlife or other leave the battlefield ability. But in his deck, it could be a nice card for the sideboard.
Instead, he's going to pick up a Blade Brand here, Death Touch draw card.
Yeah, can't get too excited about Blade Brand.
No.
It's going to do what it's going to do. He's really not going for power level in these picks.
Wow. Gosh. I
We
get the
saw
point.
these together before, right?
Who's not drafting the Rakdos deck?
So this is funny, Maria, because you go around the floor and you hear, oh yeah, I think Rakdos is the weakest guild.
Yeah.
But then imagine being at this table and getting the 2 Fire Wheelers and being the only Rakdos drafter,
Oh my
all to get the
gosh.
points. Sure, maybe somebody hate drafts it or splashes it, but everything is relative. I would love to be Rakdos.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen that deck absolutely crush too if you really prioritize aggression.
Maybe Tom could have even been the Rakdos drafter.
Could have been, maybe.
You take the Bedevil early.
Yep.
You pick some guild gates to splash the Absolution, of course.
And look, there's a guild mage.
Yeah.
Carrion Imp looks like it might be the pickup for him here. Hazda Officer as well.
Yeah, I would say Hazda Officer and Carrion Imp are on the same power level range, but that's very low.
Yeah, that was a great point. We haven't seen any Thralls.
Yeah, and all the guards, which are the two commons that I'm looking
Right.
for when I'm Orzhov. The
Where
two
are
non-removal
they?
commons that I'm looking for.
I can't believe that there just weren't any in this draft. Arrester's Zeal. There's a guild gate. Ooh, what about the Sphinx?
Does his deck really need a 7-drop? I don't think so. He has decent enough cards. I like to go for consistency now, also in these final picks.
And do you like having at least like one guild gate if you're two colors?
881 plus the locket, and you're good to go. That gives you 18 sources for your 6-drop.
Another exposed to daylight. But the vampire did come back around.
I would like to see the Viscopa Vampire. How bad is it going to be? It does what he wants in this kind of deck. Makes his raise dead effects better if he wants to play them.
Gains him life to extend the game, which he wants to do.
And it also forces trades.
Yes.
If you're not racing against a 3/1 lifelinker, you have to trade with it.
Rakdos Trumpeter left in here in his colors, which I think is a bedrock of that aggressive Rakdos deck.
Yeah, of course, without red mana, that card is significantly less interesting.
1/3 Menace.
Playable, but not exciting.
Gruul Locket, Civic Stalwart, an Anthem effect on a creature there for a turn. He's going to pick up the Elephant. As we round out pack number 3 here.
Yeah, so super solid mana base.
Yep.
More than enough playables, but the power level kind of is kind of S-shaped. You know, we have a few very powerful cards, Absolution, Consume, Basilica, Bellhound, but the rest of his deck is just very medium. So he needs to draw into those bomb cards, and he has to kind of hope to not hit the wrong matchup. If I'm Mike Sigrist and I bring in 3 counter spells and I counter your 3 best cards, the rest of your deck is just really mediocre.
So I have a question. Like, Ethereal Absolution is an absolute bomb. We know this, right? The rest of his creatures we've talked about are kind of mediocre. How can you go all in on just one card out of your 40?
Well, you have to make sure that you find it, which means delaying the game, playing card draw, playing removal, and this is kind of what he's trying to do. That's why Noxious Grudion is suddenly a playable card. You just play it on turn 3, and you either trade with it immediately, or you trade with your opponent's 5-drop. But as long as the game continues and continues, and you're not playing against somebody that's milling you out, for example, then you're good to go.
We did see a persistent petitioner in the deck, or in the packs going around the table. Maybe somebody did that. Nah, just kidding. It's a Mythic Championship. All right, what grade do you give this deck?
Really interesting. If you draw the Absolution or if you don't, I would say on average 6.5, 7. But I'm not thrilled. It's really. I think there was more. If you wanted to go for more. If you wanted to go broke, I think there was more to explore than Tom decided to.
All right, well, we're going to see these draft decks in action in just a minute. Don't go anywhere.